Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called I Will Be Next to the Main Character. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! The day has come when Sirius Hyperion, the younger brother of the current emperor, arrives in Duke Rhodes' territory, somewhere in the north. Some may think that he's just an innocent child, but the truth is, he was born special. He is an illegitimate child, and the former emperor's discriminating behavior justifies it. The problem is, legend has it that the Hyperion family is mixed with wolf blood, and Sirius is the first one in 300 years. To make the story worse, this caused an upheaval within the empire, and the crown prince killed everyone who insisted on making Sirius the heir. By everyone, that means including the emperor. But strangely, he couldn't bear to kill Sirius. I mean, he's the manifestation of the wolf after 300 years. Who knows what tough luck awaits in the corner? And so, the crown prince hid Sirius in a cold place and persecuted him to death. But at the age of 10, he was banished and sent to the north where Duke Rhodes lives with his children. Then, our dearest female lead of the story, who, despite being so young, seems to know him very well, is being bullied by her siblings. And here's how she introduces them one by one. The Duke of Rhodes had 7 children. The first one went out hunting for demons alone in the middle of winter and died. But guess what? Her father didn't even bat an eye about it. I admit he's quite handsome, but he's just as terrible as the Emperor. The second son died of poison, and the third daughter took her own life under the pressure of the Duke. The most anticipated child went away on his own, and the 6th one died at a younger age. All the deaths of his children were nothing to him, as if they weren't his own flesh and blood. All that's left is the 4th sister, Courtney, the 5th brother, Joseph, and the 7th, which is our lovely and cute female lead. That morning, her father tells him to get rid of useless feelings if they want to succeed on his throne. The reason why the Emperor sent Sirius to this den of sociopaths and madmen is because he expects his brother to die out of the Duke's cruelty. Of course, Sirius, oops, too early to spill the beans. This cute little girl hasn't been paying attention to her siblings making fun of her and just walks away from them. Perfect behavior, little girl. Sorry, Courtney, your little sister's way too mature. Wait, did I say mature? She's only 10. Actually, she's from another world who had already read this novel in the sales department. She doesn't know how she ended up in the novel itself and is playing a role of no significant presence at all. But she's glad that she knows the future where Sirius fulfills his ambitions and puts everyone at his feet. Thanks to that, she just has to stay still and do nothing except stick next to the main character. Suddenly, she hears the familiar voice of a young child outside the room. It's Sirius. She panics on what to do, so she just keeps quiet, and when he's gone, she walks to the door to close it, but then someone grabs the doorknob and pulls it open. She then comes face to face with a handsome young boy with silver hair and purple eyes. Wow! He doesn't look terrifying at all! In fact, he's so cute! Her plan to live quietly is now doomed. Looking at him closely, he surely is a very handsome child. As time went by, his face killed more than 10 of his fiancées. For this reason, she shouldn't make a mistake. Suddenly, Sirius grabs her hand and compliments how she looks very pretty. I mean, he's not wrong, but bro is going straight for it. The little girl can't believe what she hears. Sirius keeps talking about how she looks like her father and asks for her name afterward. The girl, Elena Rhodes, introduces herself. However, she's quite surprised that he knows a lot about her. On top of that, he didn't address her properly, just Elena. Suddenly, he takes a look in her room. It's just way too plain and dark, but she likes it the way it is now compared to her previous room. At this point, Elena's kinda hoping that he'll leave her alone. Facing her, he then exclaims that she's useless and walks away, leaving Elena sitting on the floor wondering what could be wrong with her. Walking away, Sirius thinks of her golden eyes, the best of Rhodes' treasures. Aside from that, he keeps thinking about how she looks beautiful. Excuse me, young sir, you have to be sorry first before complimenting her again. But realizing how she also looks the most vulnerable, she's still useless to him. Shortly after, Duke Rhodes introduces Sirius to everyone. Just then, Elena notices something very strange. This Rhodes' golden eyes can't be wrong, for it has the ability to read others' feelings. The golden eyes that were passed down for generations have the power to read people's emotions. The more golden the light is, the more powerful it becomes. Even now, Duke Rhodes uses this ability. After a fierce competition, he became the head of the Rode family. As Duke Rode formally introduces himself as Sirius's teacher, Elena can't help but wonder how he has no emotional reactions at all. Suddenly, Courtney butts in the conversation. She really wants to be included in everything, and so the Duke leaves the rest to her. The moment he passes by Elena, he calls her useless. Elena trembles out of humiliation, and the reason why the Duke hates her is because of her eyes. Even among those who possess it, her eyes are unprecedented. In every angle, all they can see is golden. The perfect golden eye has the power to look at people's emotions. In fact, when the visible emotions touch the body, the eye can feel it. That's why when her eyes don't have any change in emotion, people doubt if it's real or not. Suddenly, Courtney picks a fight with Sirius. She likes the idea of hierarchy where she's always on top, like, duh, sit down, girl. Even if Sirius is out of the Emperor's protection, you shouldn't speak to him like a slave. Elena is so curious to know what's going to happen, but on second thought, it's better to leave unnoticed. However, she senses that someone's following her. Courtney's fuming with anger as Sirius walks away from her. Elena senses the bright red aura, the emotion of rage surrounding her sister. Courtney then turns everything for the worse, pointing fingers at Elena and trying to put her in a tight situation. To them, she's just an insect, not even part of the so-called hierarchy that they only created to flatter themselves. Clearly, the Duke told Courtney not to mess with Elena, but she's determined to get rid of her eyeballs. Is it jealousy because of Elena's eyes? I mean, they are being treated well, unlike Elena, who always suffers from her father's cruelty. And so, out of habit, she tends to close her eyes to protect the golden treasure she has. She never wanted it in the first place, so whenever she saw that someone hated her, her body would act up in pain. This time, Sirius can no longer bear seeing Elena trembling in fear, so he speaks up, asking how Courtney speaks impolitely to him. That's right, Sirius. Show them who's the real deal. Elena can now sense an emotion from Sirius. Her eyes can feel that he's a bit annoyed. On top of that, he's able to throw off Courtney just like that. Now that she gets the treatment she gives to other people, she looks embarrassed. Just then, Sirius grabs her arm and walks away. This time, Elena got away from her siblings with the help of Sirius, but she still wants to spend time alone in the attic to avoid further conflicts. However, Sirius keeps following her around. Though she doesn't want to talk to him at first, she has no choice but to do it because she can't let him follow her into her room. And so, she turns around and asks him by surprise. His eyes reveal how shocked he is. It's kinda cute because he seems like a 10-year-old boy now. But well, our little boy already knows where she's going, and he will definitely follow her. Elena taps her feet on the floor, indicating how frustrated and stressed she is. Suddenly, Sirius starts emitting a joyous aura and ends up laughing at her. Who knew that the Sirius Hyperion knew how to laugh? Even more frustrated with this, Elena stomps her feet up the stairs only to be ashamed of herself when Sirius opens the door to his room, the lowest rank one. To be exact, they're neighbors. Elena's face shows how embarrassed she is, so she goes inside after a short farewell. Before Sirius entered his room, he didn't fail to wish her a good night's sleep too. In her room, she's dying in embarrassment. I mean, who wouldn't? She was so frustrated that he kept following her, only to find out that he was merely going in the same direction as her. Thinking about her father's lack of reasonable care, it's still not quite right to have a guy next to his daughter's room. Relax, Elena, you're both 10 years old. Nothing will happen, right? Right? And so the way Courtney acted earlier about how the Duke told her not to threaten Elena's life only means that he just needs the golden eyes. Well, he never treated her right from the start. In her past life, Elena was deaf but was still able to read. That was how she knew about the story of Sirius Hyperion, but before she got to the end of the novel, she was reincarnated as Duke Rhodes' youngest daughter. The Duke is notorious for his atrociousness. Seeing him face to face surely made Elena wonder why she was born into that messy family. In the novel, Sirius was a perfect male lead who acted upon his role to defeat everyone. The required characteristic of a mass-market main character is malice. Also, he was too cruel to follow a romantic path, so there wasn't a female lead. His goal was to be the strongest in the world, destroying Duke Rhodes himself when he tried to take advantage of him and insisting on his fourth daughter for marriage. Even though it was a bad ending, the process was also satisfying. Duke Rhodes raised Sirius brilliantly like a lunatic. He was a terrible madman after all, but when he saw Elena for the first time, he smiled and uttered the word, perfect. He even named the child and instructed the servants to give her everything without lacking proper care. Strange, isn't it? the madman in the novel was giving her special care, visiting and playing with her every single day. At first, she thought that was a change in the plot twist, making her the main character of the story. However, one day, the Duke instructed everyone to get out of the room, and the usual hazy white mist around her father was changed to a raging red with black smoke. Poor baby Elena shivers in fear. She wanted to run, but she still hoped that somehow her father would pat her head and brush her hair. But the Duke reached for her neck instead and choked her. What? Before she lost consciousness, she heard him saying that she might run away first upon knowing that she possessed the golden eyes. Ever since then, there have been tests she had to undergo to assess the authenticity of her eyes. Until she realized the nature of her ability, she constantly smiled despite the threats because she was scared to admit that the father, who used to care for her, was no longer that kind of person. And seeing Sirius's radiant light of pure joy earlier, it surely felt like ages ago since she'd seen something like that. Everything is pointless. The Duke clearly wants the golden eyes and not her, but she has to endure it a bit longer. Sirius will soon end everyone's life, including hers anyway. Suddenly, she hears a sound of crying from the other room where Sirius is occupying. So after all the brave face, he still cries himself to sleep when nobody's watching. The question is, what is making him cry? Elena contemplates whether to comfort him or just follow her plan to do nothing. She can't mess up with the story, but Sirius is the only one she can talk to, just for comfort. And so she opens the door to see him. No one will ever know if she consoles him. But still, she shouldn't do anything that might jeopardize the whole plan. If the Road family is to go down smoothly, there should be no change in Sirius's heart. They're not even that close for her to be going there and comforting him. That night, she ends up resisting the urge to get up and visit him. And so she didn't get a wink of sleep because of worry in some random dream where she was attacked by a monster. Rationally, it's a waste of energy to worry since Sirius is the main character who will pave his future better than anyone else. When she opens the door to eat breakfast, she's too frightened to see Sirius sitting on the window, waiting for her to come out. Elena has this habit of doubting that she feels like she's not that confident that people would really think of her nicely. Poor little girl. Sirius just keeps looking at her without saying anything. Let's admit, he looks cute with that poker face even though she can just see through him. Elena decides to just ignore him, but Sirius starts asking if she slept well. Obviously, she didn't, but she doesn't want to admit it. So now she's getting delusional that after crying all night, he became kinder when he woke up. That isn't possible. However, he looks really happy, so she assumes that he just cried in his dreams. Elena proceeds to the dining room, and Sirius, as always, follows her. It's been a day since they met, but he looks more handsome in her eyes. Even his hair is still puffed up from waking up, and he's smaller than her. In no time, he'll be taller than her, but it can't be helped to admire how cute he is right now. Elena opens the door to the dining hall where everyone has already eaten and left. In the Road family, Elena has to wait for everyone to finish eating before digging in with the leftover food. Really, she'd care less if this family would crumble down one day. She just has to trust Sirius with it. Suddenly, Elena smells a familiar dish. It's been a long time since something decent was left. Sirius tries to stop her from going to the kitchen, but it turns out that even if she waits all day, no one will come to serve. And so, she shows him how to prepare her own breakfast without the help of servants. Sirius exclaims that he likes how simple it is. Of course, Elena can't believe why he isn't even complaining about it knowing that he's of royal blood. Just when she's about to eat, she notices that he is just staring at her without even lifting the spoon. She's so hungry right now, but how can she eat when someone's looking at her like that? My God, say something! Elena finally understands why he'd always stare at her without saying a word. It's like he's waiting for her to greet him before saying it back. OMG, I think it all started when she greeted him with a good night's sleep first. OMG, he's so cute. But why is he so worked up with waiting for her greeting in the first place? Elena's starting to imagine him as a greeting fairy. Surely with that cute face, he can pull it off given the sunlight on his silver hair. But even so, he's still a young beast who will soon make others pay for what they have done to him, unlike her who still keeps clinging to others. No, don't talk like that, little girl. Can't wait for the time when he'll protect her just like how he threw off Courtney the last time she pointed fingers at Elena. Still, she's worried why he cried last night. However, he suddenly stands and leaves her wondering why he didn't greet her back. Shortly after, Elena watches from the balcony how Sirius takes up his first day of training. In her defense, she's just bored and wants something worth watching. No other special reasons, that's just it. Way too defensive about it, Elena. Relax. But there's nothing she can do aside from getting bored out of doing absolutely nothing. After the Duke has deprived her of his affection, everyone expected that she was going to die soon, but unlike her sixth brother, whom he just let die of the cold, he immediately summoned a doctor to treat her. Even the servants were confused about this and didn't know how they should behave around Elena, and so they ended up with the conclusion of treating her like a ghost. And being a living ghost, she's always bored. Back to the training, Sirius is doing pretty well with swords even with that small body. Given that he possesses broad vision compared to a normal human, who has no beastly intuition, there's no doubt that he's already a monster. But is he really a monster? Suddenly, the Duke stops him, disappointed in his performance, and so he instructs his men to bring the counter, a sword practice tool that's way harder to handle. The Duke swings his sword and he hits the target in a flash. His moves are so flawless and his speed is highly incredible. When it is Sirius's time to try, he manages to control his strength and hit the target. However, the Duke calls him ignorant for such an amazing performance already. What is wrong with it? Suddenly, he approaches Sirius, about to do something that triggers Elena's trauma. Elena falls back, losing the strength all over her body the moment Duke Road raises his hands. If she had known that it would come to this, she would never have come out to watch. For how many years of violence from her father, it's scary to witness it being done to someone else. No! Don't you dare, Duke! Her trembling hands cover her ears as she goes back inside her room, repeating the words that she doesn't want to get hit anymore, let alone tremble like a beaten pup. That night, she regrets why she didn't eat at all. Also, she hasn't heard him back yet, but she's sure that he'll be fine. That's according to the book. Whatever the punishment, Sirius will never waver. So she just has to worry about herself. However, she heard a loud thud from Sirius's room, followed by a tormenting groan. Even if she can't see him, she knows exactly what situation he's in now. In the novel, the Emperor put a bounty on Sirius's head and even permitted Duke Road if he wanted to kill him. He's now agonizing in so much pain that it bothers her more. She can't take it anymore. She has to help him, but she's also worried that Sirius won't be able to achieve victory if she butts in the story. But he's suffering so much and she definitely can't let him die. To justify what she's about to do, she convinces herself that Sirius is her insurance, the only shot of protection she might have in the future. There's nothing scarier than becoming acquainted with Sirius like this because he's not in his right mind. He's also very cautious of people who want to help him. Still, she takes a little peek to check if he's okay. But when she moves further inside, she doesn't expect him to turn out like that. His small body is shaking as he tries to get a hold of his aching shoulders. He is covered in dirt and bruises are all over his body. He is in such bad shape that he can no longer respond. How did the Duke treat him so heartlessly? Luckily, Elena has some spare medicine. She has to hurry, or else she will have a massive loss of insurance. There's no time to lose. Elena has quite a bit of a frantic search for medicine to help the fever-stricken prince. She rushes back to Sirius, who is unfortunately still apparently unconscious. Nonetheless, with the sole thought of making sure her only insurance towards a life without her family wouldn't die, Elena goes into full nursing mode. However, she still makes sure that the injured prince would not wake up during her treatments, to save them from awkwardness, of course. The youngest road child pushes Sirius so that he can lie on his back, and she finally manages to see the extent of the damage that her family, particularly her father, can inflict on someone. It seems every part of the young prince's body has some sort of injury, if not bruises. And to make matters worse, he also has a burning fever. Poor Sirius. Duke Road has gone too far. How could he hurt a little child? Karma is coming to you, you vile creature. Even his hands had some bruises from handling swords. And so Elena sets about trying to make his temperature go down by first wiping his body with a cold, wet towel. But the poor Sirius, despite being unconscious, flinches from Elena's treatment, indicating that he's enduring a lot of pain. Regardless, taking care not to do harm than what is necessary, Elena succeeds in making Sirius drink medicine for fever and disinfecting his wounds for the most part. Soon enough, the prince's temperature goes down, and by this time, he looks like an angel sleeping, as if no pain or hurt has ever come his way. His hands, however, tell another story. Battered, bruised, and swollen, they don't fit Sirius's peaceful look as of the moment. As Elena is applying balms that could help bring the swelling down of the prince's hands, she notices him crying again, making her think about Sirius and his supposed role to play in the novel she's in. Elena can't seem to fathom that someone who is destined to become a cruel person, someone cold enough to resist the bad environment of her house, someone as determined as he is, would cry. She notices, though, that he only does so when he's alone, and all she can think about is how young and innocent the supposed main character is as of this moment. In a rather sweet gesture, Elena reaches for his hands in order to help with the tears, and resides by his bedside for just a bit more. Anyway, the next morning comes, and with it, the same routine of Sirius waiting for Elena to come out of her room. She notices him acting a bit out of character, asking questions about her sleep more so than usual. But then again, she's confident there's no way he was awake through all of that last night. But still, regardless of the fact, he again falls silent, and even though she suspects that he might be a devil because of how fast he recovers. Although he's still admittedly a bit wobbly when walking, Elena feels relieved nonetheless that the prince is okay. Relief is evidenced by perhaps one of the most genuinely happy smiles that she has made in a long while. Aww, I hope their relationship develops even more from now on. Elena's happiness doesn't last as long as it should have, though, as soon after, they again take their breakfast in relative silence. The girl thinks to herself about how worried she was about him just moments before, but as it seems, nothing special is going to happen anyway. In fact, he doesn't even utter a single word as she serves him food, making Elena wonder if he's just planning on ignoring her again. However, almost as if he can hear her mind, as soon as Elena finishes the thought in her head, Sirius suddenly speaks, asking her to come with him after she's done eating. He doesn't give any further explanation, though, and walks away calmly, even after Elena suddenly asks what that was about. So, of course, this leaves the young girl more confused, if anything. As of the moment, actually, Elena admits to herself how she doesn't want to follow him. But then again, she's left with no choice. He's your insurance, right? But whatever place she had expected him to bring her, it seems she was still shocked that he brought her to a shooting range for archery practice. To be more specific, Sirius brought her there to wait until he was finished. The girl, not wanting to waste away her efforts the night before by suddenly being mean to the young prince, merely asks to sit under the shade of the trees as she waits for him, even though she really wants to refuse. But it seems it's because she's more anxious about the arrival of her father in that training area than anything else. Her father, who as of late, is still engulfed in that suffocating black aura. Nevertheless, at least Elena gets to experience a bit of peace as she sits in the lovely shade of the trees, illuminated by golden lights. There, she thinks of how Sirius's stare, like it did the first time they met, is filled with the notion that concludes that she's useless. Still, it seems that pain has long since been endured by the youngest child of the Rode family, and Elena thinks it affects her no more. Besides, her plan as of now is still underway, with her silently waiting for its fruition. Drowsiness manages to catch up on her after a while, simply because of how little she got due to last night's good deed. Elena begins to drift to sleep with the surroundings befitting her with calming smells, until suddenly, the scent of blood reaches her nose. She opens her eyes, only to find the young prince covered head to toe with blood. Naturally, Elena gets nervous about him, even considering that he might be injured again, though she sees his aura is more excited than anything else. That nervousness extends even further as he offers a hand to her, which she takes. Unfortunately, she's so flustered about the entire thing that she also starts acting fidgety. And in a moment of complete disarray, she says that she'd like to pat his head in praise as Sirius asks her what's wrong. Like a child who's done a good job and asks for validation for it, Sirius looks Elena in her eyes and with the tiniest hint of happiness in his smile, asks her to hurry up and praise him. How can he look so adorable? He's covered in blood, for God's sake. Shock is what initially creeps in Elena after what Sirius said. How such an affectionate smile could ever come from a face covered in blood is the only thought running through her head at this point. But nonetheless, she still reaches out her hand and pats the young prince on the head. The nervousness didn't dissipate, however, and Elena is even left wondering whether or not the prince even enjoys his request because of his expression reverting to his usual stoic demeanor. Fortunately, the silence is broken by Sirius himself, who asks if Elena has seen what has just happened. Apparently, he has skipped training lessons because of a clearly biased knight assigned to teach him, and so he decided to train by fighting a monster the knight of the Rode family had captured. What? That's dangerous! He won, of course, explaining his bloody appearance, though this did not help much about Elena's opinion of him as someone destined for bloodshed. But more importantly, Elena finds Sirius staring intently at her again. What is his problem? If you have something to say, little prince, you better speak up, Sirius. This time, Perhaps with a sense of need, the prince's tender eyes gaze upon her, until they don't. As abruptly as he has looked at her, Sirius stands up and walks away without another word. And Elena, though left wondering about what it was the prince had been waiting for, was glad enough to be back in her room and left alone. What a mood. We do need our peace. But actually, she is just happy that her supposed crime of helping the prince remains undiscovered by Sirius himself. That is, until a few days later, she finds herself back inside his room and Sirius in a worse condition than before. Apparently, the Duke Road had been impressed with the growth of the young prince in swordsmanship, and so had asked his son Joseph to spar with him. Unfortunately, anxiety and fear of losing his standing with his father made Joseph attack prior to the countdown. And although Sirius manages to dodge, his sword manages to chip him near the side of his stomach. The Duke ends the fight with praises for Sirius and punishment for Joseph, but unfortunately, the Duke's son ensures no doctor will come to Sirius's aid. What is wrong with these people? Gosh, especially the Duke! You're traumatizing these kids for no reason. You're really gonna get what's coming for you. And so, Elena sets about trying to correct the bandages on his wounds until Sirius grabs her by the arm, showing that he's been awake the entire time. Those piercing blue eyes are enough for Elena to be frozen in her place as Sirius grabs hold of her hand. Despite him being the one who's bloodied in his own bed, ironically, Elena is the one who's panicking. Perhaps even without his hands gripping tightly on hers, she might still be too scared to move just by the way he stares. The first comprehensible thought that runs through Elena's head is, again, to run away. But Sirius won't let go. He asks what all this is about. However, the frantic Elena can't come up with a good excuse explaining her presence in his room. She tries to run away again, but this time, the young prince pulls on her arm, much to her distress, knowing that much force will send her toppling on his bed as well. And sure enough, Sirius manages to position the youngest road daughter right on top of him, their faces merely inches away. At first, Elena finds relief at not making the prince's wounds worsen by being on top of him, but as their faces draw closer still, she finally becomes aware of the awkward situation. Awkward indeed. Racking her brain for excuses, unfortunately, all that comes to her mind is covering Sirius's eyes and telling him that all this was a dream. Not her proudest moment, I reckon. But still, the prince manages a smile at Elena's attempt at an explanation, despite being injured at that. Though one will never guess that depending on the innocence that lingers on the young boy's smile. He laughs again at Elena, frantically explaining how all this would be gone in the morning, but eventually, he loosens his grip and drifts to sleep. Elena then tries to return to her own room, but after a moment of frantic thinking, decides to help Sirius again, so that one day, he can bring down the Road family and allow her much sought-after escape. Besides, with her golden eyes, she can see whether or not Sirius has become the evil man he's apparently destined to be. But the funny thing about life is that, as Elena herself soon discovers, they don't always go as planned. Immediately after waking up from her eventful evening, Elena again thinks about her plans to run away, even considering the notion that the prince can't kill her right away now if he turns into the bloodthirsty hero of the novel, so she still has a lot of time. But as she opens the door, the smell of blood immediately hits her nose. She looks up, only to see Sirius sitting on the window with blood dripping from his bandaged wound. What's more curious? He has a big smile on his face. The prince's upbeat attitude leaves Elena at a loss, simply because she sees his smile is as genuine as any because of his warm aura. Nonetheless, Sirius motions them to go to breakfast, but all the girl can think about is how she can't understand such a boy with that much resilience and a rather unstable mental state. Seems a rather harsh reaction to someone being nice, but okay. Anyway, her confidence from before that she can detect changes in his attitude doesn't seem as strong as it was before. And for better or for worse, she's now stuck with an uncharacteristically happy Sirius. A prince who keeps on matching her stride as they walk and who asks whether or not she has something to say. Sirius is even the one to pour the bean soup on their plates and even says bon appetit first before their meal. All of that adds more to Elena's confusion, as even if Sirius considers the night before as a dream, it still doesn't explain why he's so nice. Just as she thinks that she's lost her appetite, a knock is suddenly heard from the room. Apparently, the Duke had ordered steaks for the prince because of his previous improvements. Elena tries to control herself and only focus on her meals, but again, Sirius is the one to give her a cut from the meat reserved for him. And with a smile as he observes the girl being happy from the taste, Sirius suddenly reveals that apparently Elena had appeared in his dreams. This sends the girl thinking about pretending, but she decides to play it safe and ask more about it. A wise move, seeing as he admits that it has happened more than once, and in fact, in one of those dreams, she held his hand through the night. The prince doesn't give out that much information about it afterward, though, much to Elena's annoyance. Actually, she's so bothered that the prince thinks that every emotion she feels is clearly written on her face. Just before, he also thinks that what he wants comes true, along with perhaps the second smile he has done today with the purest and most innocent happy aura. For now, we look into the story so far in the eyes of the young Prince Sirius. All those days ago, a golden carriage from the capital came riding into the Duke of Rhodes' palace. On it, the bubbly eyes of Sirius, who peeks at his new home, are filled with hope. For the first time, he has escaped the vile clutches of the royal family and its castle. For the first time, he is not in the presence of his terrifying older brother, nor is he faced with poisonous food. So now, in a new chapter of his life, the boy has started to dream. That, perhaps, is a life where he can wake up to good mornings, where meals are eaten together with his peers, sleep fairly comfortably, and even receive good nights. So essentially, Sirius longs for a normal life. Unfortunately, he soon discovers upon meeting Duke Rhodes that such a life is impossible. He may have escaped the royal palace, but it's still the same thing in the Duke's mansion. Everyone had malice in their eyes, and so the young Sirius is forced to repel hostility with hostility. Poor child. At least, that was his plan until just by chance, he met a girl. A girl who, despite being the one who perfectly fit the description of a Rhodes, did not act like one. At first, he enjoys teasing the girl because even if he laughs and giggles, no one can tell due to his expressionless face. However, Elena does manage to squeeze a reaction out of him, unbeknownst to her, of course. It turns out that when Elena greeted him goodnight, one of his dreams had come true in spite of him giving up, making him cry in silence in his room. Ugh, my heart aches for him. But the memory of his supposed moment of weakness jolts him back to the present, where Sirius sees Elena being upset. Though she says it's nothing, Elena can see the change from a happy aura to a depressing blue color enveloping the prince. For someone with the ability to read people's hearts, Elena admits that she really doesn't know what he's thinking. In order to escape the awkwardness of the situation and to wash down all she ate before she gets sick, Elena decides to drink water. But preoccupied as she was, she unexpectedly began choking and started coughing. Perhaps what is most unexpected is that Sirius moved swiftly to be by her side in order to check up on her. Elena is shocked with how quickly the prince moved, but nonetheless manages to say she's fine. But Sirius won't let the topic drop that fast, asking follow-up questions as to what might have caused Elena to choke and whether or not she's sick. With his purple eyes that now seem as soft as puppy eyes staring straight at her, Elena finds it strange yet again that the prince actually seems worried about her. Although he nonchalantly comments that she really is weak, to which Elena replies that she's born that way, but still, it's pretty normal. Those words seem to hit Sirius as he looks down and checks his already healing wounds because of his wolf blood. But in his eyes, despite viewing Elena as perhaps the weakest he's ever seen, he notes that her attempts to help him make it all the better as he stares intently at her. So there really is a deeper meaning when he calls her weak, and it's not just a term for berating. Anyway, Sirius admits in his mind that he was in fact aware of Elena helping him get through those hard nights. And although he already knew from living a harsh life that kindness does not happen without reason, he seems to think that Elena is the sole exception as he recalls her holding his hand as they sleep. Perhaps the spark of what will be a raging fire of love, maybe? The prince did leave a little clue that indicates he knew of Elena's kind acts by saying she should take the medicine stocked in her room. She starts to panic naturally, but before she can act on her thoughts to run away, Sirius invites her to watch him train. And with a smile at that, of course. And so Elena finds herself waiting by the forest where she unexpectedly stumbles upon Joseph, who due to his punishment is wearing a squire's attire. Joseph tries to intimidate his youngest sister, but soon discovers that his tactics don't work, and Elena has only frozen due to the arrival of Sirius. Himself being surprised at the arrival of what he thought was an injured prince, Joseph inadvertently places a hand on Sirius's shoulder. As a prince, a menacing aura emanates from Sirius as he asks who gave permission to Joseph to touch him. In response, Joseph raises his hand, trying to land a strike on the young prince. But before the situation can develop further, the Duke of Rhodes arrives, his stares as cold as ice. Just one word from the Duke of Rhodes himself is enough to freeze the children. As Elena notes, the Duke may have a calm tone to his voice, but she still prefers to not be in her father's presence. She doesn't blame Sirius, though, knowing that the boy himself was oblivious too. And speaking of the devil, Sirius himself steps in between the Duke's gaze and Elena, who has shriveled in her father's presence. The young prince decides to take action on the whole situation, saying that the commotion was just him asking Joseph a question. Unfortunately, the Duke seems to find this amusing and proceeds to grill his son about the whole thing. Much like Elena, Joseph shies away from their father, and in light of the Duke's dominating presence, he's forced to lie about his encounter with the prince. Nevertheless, the Duke smiles, and as Elena sees through her golden eyes, the aura around her father is more about curiosity and interest than anger. And yet still, he asks Joseph to follow him, leaving both Elena and Sirius to their discretion. But as soon as Elena is left alone to her own thoughts, Sirius grabs her hand and leads her out. In her mind, though she'd like to ask where they'll go, it seems that she catches herself thinking that the thought of Sirius actually calms her down. Despite his not being able to block the Duke's voice or even his gaze, he still stepped in front of Elena, indicating the want to help. This won't be nice in terms of the future Elena is sure to happen, however. But still, Sirius leads her back to the house and asks where she'd like to go at this time. Elena automatically answers the library, but still tries to push away Sirius so that they won't spend the whole day together by implying she wants to be alone as she browses the books. Unfortunately, all her plans crumble in the face of Sirius's cute, puppy-like face when he asks if he could at least wait outside. Once Elena is alone in the library, she comes to her senses. Why is she such a weak person persuaded by a cute face? Well, that's saying something. She paces back and forth, questioning her sanity. No matter how cute Sirius is, she has to keep herself together because no matter how puppy-like he is now, he will grow up and destroy the whole empire. In the novel, Sirius has had many unwanted engagements because of the Emperor. The women he's encountered were all captivated by his appearance, from his finances to even his assassin. There wasn't a time that this man had not been ugly, just like how a male lead is supposed to be. However, this doesn't justify him being this cute when he was younger. It simply isn't fair. Since she's in the library anyway, she decides to skim through books, and she takes her time. Surely, Sirius didn't wait for her that long, right? Even though she doesn't want to be involved with him, she still checks on him like a decent human being. Unfortunately, a familiar voice calls out to her, and it only means trouble. Joseph, with a dark aura around him, approaches her menacingly. After being called by their father, Elena is sure that he is in a horrid mood. This creature, Joseph, hands her an elongated object covered by a black cloth, instructing her to give it to Sirius. He tells her that it's supposed to be from their father. When she asks what it is, he loses his temper, calling her a worm for questioning him. What an entitled brat! This kid is the embodiment of everything vile. Ugh! He is about to hit her with the object when a hand stops it. Sirius has come, and his eyes say it all. He's pissed. She looks at the boy, and she notices that his cheeks are red, and she wonders why. Sirius turns to her and apologizes for coming in even though she told him to wait outside. This only makes Elena feel guilty. She is about to touch his head, but he beats her to it, touching her head and telling her to wait. Chaos begins at this point. Sirius turns to Joseph, who's leaving, and throws the long object at him. Joseph refuses to apologize, and Sirius is not having it. With his purple eyes glinting viciously, he kicks the kid twice his size. That is when Elena realizes that Sirius is blushing because he's excited to be violent. Joseph, for his part, is too prideful to show that he was hurt. And like the little menace that he is, Sirius merely tells him to endure it better next time, which enrages Joseph. He is about to attack him, but Sirius grabs his wrist. That is the moment that Joseph learns how much strength is in this little boy's body. He desperately tells him to let go, afraid that he will break his wrist. With a smirk on his face, Sirius does not let up. Rather, he uses his hold on him to throw him against the bookshelf. This kid is vicious, but serves you right, Joseph, for being such a nasty bully. Sirius is fuming because he almost hurt Elena, a person whom he believes is only for him. Such a bold declaration there, Sirius. Are you sure that Elena is aware of that? Without remorse, he continues to beat Joseph up, even stepping on his wrist. The boy on the floor is aghast that this kid is hurting him so ferociously, yet his face is void of any emotions. Are you even human, Sirius? Joseph attempts to apologize, but Sirius mischievously declares that he doesn't need his apology, and that's it. Before he can truly break the boy's wrist, he looks back at Elena only to see that she is huddled on the ground, pale and shaking. Without a second thought, Sirius rushes to her, thinking that she's hurt. Turns out, Elena is not strong enough to see violence in front of her. Sirius takes her hand and checks on her. Elena then realizes that Sirius did those things because he's trying to help her. So even if she is scared, she still explains that she's fine, getting rid of Sirius's worries. He tells her how weak she is and proceeds to carry her on his back. How strong is this kid? Elena is beside herself. She feels like dying out of awkwardness. However, she still feels warm with him, and before she knows it, she falls asleep. She only wakes when they reach her room. He puts her down and she realizes that she hasn't thanked him yet, so she bows her head and expresses her gratitude. Sirius is relieved that she is no longer pale, and proving just how clueless he is, he asks her if he should go back and break Joseph's wrist. Like, it's the most normal thing in the world. Elena, not wanting to see any more bloodshed, tells him that her brother has had enough. Before Elena can enter her chambers, Sirius stops her. He then asks her to accompany him to see the master. Why does Sirius suddenly want to talk with her father? Seeing that she is hesitating, he holds out his hand for her, saying that if she is afraid, she can take it and they will go together. I still don't understand what is going on in his head, but he is such a sweetheart to her. Elena doesn't want to go, but Sirius is determined to go even if she doesn't come. Elena doesn't want him to go alone either, so even though she knows she'll regret it, she goes with him. Meanwhile, the Duke and Courtney are talking about how Joseph was beaten up by Sirius. The Duke is disappointed that even though Joseph has been taught by him, he is still bested. The Duke throws a candle, almost missing Courtney. She flinches but wills herself to not be scared. She needs her father's favor if she is to be his heir. To her surprise, the Duke declares that he'd rather have Sirius as his son since he possesses a natural talent. Wow! Father of the Year, ladies and gentlemen. Way to go, Mr. Evil Duke! He thinks that it is a waste to kill him, even if it is ordered by the Emperor. Now that he has the wolf descendant in his care, there is no better time to act than now. He wants to make Sirius part of the Rhodes household through marriage. At that moment, Prince Sirius and Elena come to see him. He dismisses Courtney, and he lets the two children in. The two greet him respectfully, and he observes how Sirius looks at him without fear. Meanwhile, he can only feel disgusted when he looks at Elena. Grr, this guy! No matter how handsome you are still vile for treating Elena like this. The prince came to claim his reward from earlier. Apparently, the Duke has promised to give him whatever he likes after coming to training on time despite his injuries. The boy looks at him straight in the eyes and declares that he wants Elena by his side every time he studies. The Duke is silent, staring at the two children's entwined hands. He smirks, knowing that rather than a political marriage, a marriage due to affection will ensure that Sirius will be entangled with House Rhodes. Elena will finally be useful, and killing her real father will finally be worth it. I'm sorry, what? What did you just say, sir? 10 years ago, Hugo Rhodes was looking at the broken Linus Rhodes, who was locked in a cell. He found it unpleasant to be looking at someone who looked so much like him, suffering like that. They were half-brothers, but they looked so similar that you may think they were identical twins. However, unlike him, Linus always had a smile on his face. He told the poor creature in the cell that his child had been born. With a sad smile on his face, Linus told his brother that he promised Stacy that he would name their child Elena. The House of Rhodes had a rule that illegitimate children were not allowed to carry bloodlines to prevent the scattering of power. However, Linus breaks this rule by falling in love with a maid named Stacy. They ran away, and the only reason that they were caught was because Stacy was pregnant. After capturing Linus, they threw him in a cell and broke his legs. You horrible people! The child was born with perfect golden irises, so Hugo decided to claim her as his own daughter. In order to do so, there should be no birth parents. Now that Stacy was gone after giving birth to the child, he suggested to Linus that he would take Elena as his daughter, so she wouldn't suffer being an illegitimate child, but Linus had to die. Without hesitation, Linus agrees. Also, his daughter can live. Oh my God! My heart goes out to him. Poor Linus, and now poor Elena who ended up with this monster. And so Hugo ran his sword through his own brother, calling him stupid when Linus thanked him. That is because he is a much better person than you. And so Elena grew up as his daughter, a child with perfect golden eyes. Those eyes were supposed to have the ability to see not just emotions, but the future as well. However, no matter what he did, the child was just a disappointment. He even threatened her life, but the child merely suffered. Grr, you will really get what's coming for you. However, at present, this so-called useless child has managed to attract Sirius. So with a devious smile, he allows the two to study together. Elena has to prepare herself for what's to come because of that thing that happened yesterday. On their way back from the Duke's office, Sirius confessed something to her. He actually can't read. He's a prince, for God's sake. Why didn't anyone teach a child how to read? Hearing this shocks Elena so much that she exclaims loudly. She now sees the evidence of how Sirius has been treated in the Imperial Palace, causing her heart to sink. He wants her to teach him before the tutors arrive. She knows that she has to refuse. She desperately wants to refuse, but in the end, she can't say no to him. That's why she finds herself with him in her room early in the morning, the only place they won't be disturbed. She has to teach him fast and not care about him after this. He suddenly calls her teacher Elena and nearly gives her a heart attack. However, she is uncomfortable with this. When she tells him, he pretends to be sulking, but she can tell that he is making fun of her. He then suggests that they call each other casually instead. Since it is better than him using honorifics with her, she reluctantly agrees. So when she calls him by his name, he brightens like the sun. Ah, so cute! A bit manipulative, but he is so adorable. Meanwhile, Elena doesn't understand why she likes being casual with him. When evening arrives, they decide to end their study session. She notices that Sirius seems like a genius considering how he managed to understand and memorize everything easily. There is a question that's been bugging her for some time. She asks him why he is suddenly being nice to her. He answers that it's because she is nice to him too. She is about to deny it, but he tells her not to bother. He knows about everything she did for him. This behavior of his is strange to her because Sirius in the original story has always been suspicious of people. But she seems to be the exception. She praises him when she sees him bringing books to study on his own. He tells her that it is proof that she taught him hard, and that means that she'll become a useful person someday. He emphasizes that if she wants to survive, she has to be useful. When he leaves, Elena laments that she still can't figure him out. She then notices a note stuck in her book. The handwriting is messy, and it is obviously from Sirius, telling her that they must have a good day tomorrow too. Since spending time with Sirius, Elena has learned that he can do cute things sometimes, but he acts crazy the next moment. At this point, her life is becoming increasingly difficult, so she needs to make a different strategy to survive. Sirius seems to think that Elena is on his side. The thing is, she doesn't think she'll live long if she's next to him. So to discourage Sirius from spending time with her, she'll make herself as useless as possible. The next time they are together, she asks Sirius to play house with her, thinking that he wants no part in such a childish game. Well, I have a feeling that this will not end as you expect, little Elena. However, she is taken aback when he doesn't know what it is. So she explains that they will pretend that they are a married couple. And so Elena demonstrates how to play it. So the two of them pretend to be married, and Elena even calls him honey. This endearment makes Sirius blush adorably, and he promptly follows her lead, using the sweet nickname as well. Aw, how precious! Sirius is certainly enjoying being affectionate with someone. Eventually, the two end up lying on the mat with their hands entwined. Elena tells him that when they open their eyes, the game is over. To her surprise, Sirius tells her that the game is fun and that he wants to do it again. Elena's heart suddenly starts beating like crazy, and she remembers that he let her call him honey. How can she let someone who will kill more than 10 of his fiancés in the future call her honey? At this point, she is questioning if she really values her own life. She decides that she'll play in the field the next time. Later on, when Sirius is not with her, she decides to pay Joseph a visit. Her brother is in pretty bad shape after taking a beating from Sirius. Joseph looks at her with contempt, asking why she is there. She tells him that she wants an apology. He apologizes, but she asks him if he is really sincere. He angrily turns away, saying that it doesn't matter if he did. She tells her brother that he has received enough punishment. She knows that if Sirius notices his phony apology, for his sake, he better apologize properly. Teary-eyed, Joseph faces her again, asking if he will really be forgiven if he's sorry from the bottom of his heart, and if she will leave him alone. Looking at Joseph now, she can't help but internal panic that he is crying now. Seeing him like this makes her realize that he is just a child. She reminds him to be careful about what he does from then on because she will not let him off the hook so easily next time. He agrees with her, and for the second time, he apologizes. This time around, it sounds genuine. Later on, Elena goes to their spot in the forest that Sirius calls the house. When she arrives, Sirius faces her with a bright smile, obviously happy to see her. She sees that he has been writing with a stick, and she notices how much his handwriting has improved. She sees that he has written her name as well, but that he has gotten his wrong. She corrects it for him, but seeing his bright smile, she realizes that he did it on purpose. He explains that he likes seeing her write his name. Aww, for someone destined to cause so much destruction, he sure is sweet to our little Elena. Elena takes note that he is so happy and that he is slowly moving closer. Before she knows it, he kisses her cheek. Her face instantly turns red, and rather than acknowledge what he did, he merely asks her what she plans to play. He even implies that he wants to play house again. It is incredibly hard for her to resist him, but she has to appear to be useless to him. She announces that she wants to watch the ants. He is confused, of course, because how can that be fun? But like a puppy, he goes with what she likes anyway. And it turns out, the two actually enjoyed it. How bizarre. Well, if you're a kid, anything can be fascinating. When it is time for them to go back, she takes his hand, ignoring how her heart is beating so hard. They walk through the forest together and marvel at how big it is. The two are amazed by how beautiful the place is. Suddenly, Sirius notices something shining on a tree. When Elena goes near it, they discover that it's a locket necklace. Someone must have left it there. They open it, and the two are shocked by what they see. Inside the locket is a picture of a beautiful woman with a name engraved beside it, Stacy Blair. Suddenly, Elena sprints away from there, confusing Sirius, who has no choice but to follow. Elena swears that she knows that name. She runs and runs until she reaches the graveyard. She once again holds Sirius's hand and leads him somewhere. They eventually stop in front of a gravestone of a person named Stacy. She tells him that she is her mother. She talks about how her mother died after giving birth to her, and she has always thought that her mother was an orphan. There are rumors that she is an illegitimate child and that the Duke had had a scandal with a maid named Stacy. When she asks the Duke about her mother, he replies that she's an orphan, clearly not wanting her to continue asking questions. Looking at the picture now, she recognizes that these are the characteristics she knows about her mother because of the rumors. However, this person has a surname. Did her father lie to her about her mother being an orphan? She is taken out of her reverie when Sirius tells her that he thinks that is her mother because they look so similar, even poking her face good-naturedly. She blushes like a tomato because of this. She thinks that he is right. That woman is her mother. She wears the necklace, glad to finally have something of her. She then tells him about her plan to leave that place in order to find out more about her mother. He is surprised that she wants to leave, but when he sees how determined she is, he swears that he'll help her leave. Later on, the Duke comes home, and he has summoned his children and Sirius. To Courtney's annoyance, the Duke addressed them first, and even more unusual is that he is calling them by their name. He tells them that Viscount Dalton shall be their tutor. She is still contemplating the Duke's strange behavior when their father suddenly dismisses the children except for her. She is internally panicking, and she takes a long time to let go of Sirius's hand. What does he want with her? She is so scared of him that she can't even look up. To her surprise, he addresses her and acknowledges that she's had a hard time. Yeah, because of you, you good-for-nothing father. He tells her in such a condescending manner that he'll return to her what she deserves. He reaches to touch her face and tells her to come back to the mansion. Ugh! My hatred for this guy is like a rich person's credit card. It is limitless. Rather than saying anything, she flees, leaving her evil father behind. The Duke knows that it's going to be hard since he already expects her not to respond to his kindness instantly. But since he is still the father she knows, she will acknowledge him. His plan will go smoothly in the end. This arrogant man. Your handsome face will not save you if I decide to go in this novel myself and slap you in the face. Meanwhile, Elena is wide awake. She is already back in the mansion, and her room is benefiting someone who is the daughter of the Duke. To stop her endless train of thought, she goes outside to the living room only to see Sirius as well. Turns out, they both can't sleep. Sirius offers her a cup of milk and then promptly stares at her. She asks him what the deal is, and he answers that she looks really cute in her pajamas. Sirius just can't understand why he wants to hug her so much. The poor boy is confused and wonders if being cute makes someone want to hug them. Sirius thinks to himself that the Duke is making his kindness too obvious. It is a good thing that Elena also sees through his act. He is so deep in thought that he doesn't notice Elena calling him. He acknowledges her, so she begins talking about their upcoming lessons together. Elena is actually internally panicking. A lot of things are changing, and there are events she can't recall from the novel. She doesn't even remember a Viscount Dalton as a family tutor. She knows that even if she cares for Sirius, she has to stick to her plan. The two of them decide to sleep in the living room together. He even suggests that they go play camping there. Elena instantly agrees, and the two are moving to get blankets and pillows immediately. They eventually lay down, holding hands and facing the stars through the glass roof. Sirius turns to her and tells her that they should have camping games for real. He confesses that he is looking forward to be able to play with her. With a bright and hopeful expression, she agrees. Maybe, just maybe, Sirius won't throw her away no matter how useless she is. We'll stop here for today, guys. Yes, I know you want more. Don't forget to ask for the next part in the comment section. Thank you guys for watching and for your support. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Till the next one.